Hey guys, it's Matt. Using the old-fashioned radio show graphic, it's probably appropriate to start like this. Think of the mindset of the people that sat around an old-fashioned radio and listened to an Orson Welles program. There was no television. They looked forward to certain radio programs that came on at a certain time. In some cases, the entire family gathered around. These are things that anybody under age 35 can't even comprehend. Take out your Little Orphan Annie decoder ring and then be disappointed when it unscrambles to remember to eat your Ovaltine. But think of the mindset of these people. Now, post-World War II, their lives in this reality, compared to what we have now, seem pretty good, right? We're going to get that new refrigerator, hun. There's something called a range and a washer and dryer. Go to work and there's a pension. But would you want to be there mentally? Think about it. I don't think it's a coincidence that as a very, very large group of people like us start to understand the basis of how reality works, that everything here is backwards. Everything here is a reflection or an inverse, that it's starting to break down. The matrix is starting to break down. So if you were just that guy and girl huddling around the old-fashioned radio and you'd let your kids listen in and remember your Little Orphan Annie decoder rings, and you just go to work, your job was solid, nobody really got laid off, retire at age 62, 65, full pension. My grandfather worked for U.S. Steel. He wasn't making hundreds of thousands, but it was the equivalent pension today of like $60,000. With full medical. He retired in his early 60s, and he wasn't rich by any means. He was just comfortable. Full pension from these big companies. Not everybody had it, but a lot of people had it back in the day. And he would go into his room and read his Shakespeare, and didn't have to worry about healthcare bills, and but had worries about human things, life and death and disease and sickness and, bugs in the house and things like that. But okay, do you really want to covet that life? Because those people were blind to how things really work. I'd rather be in the situation we are now, where we understand not just about the nature of reality itself, but understand the nature of ourselves. That is so much more important than just a comfortable life. Looking back on this existence is just, like I've said many times, is just stepping in and out of a closet for a half a second. When you look at it from the right perspective or back up far enough. Of course, I don't even need to. We don't need to debate anymore. The atheist perspective of, is this it? Of course not. It's a joke. It's just a train stop. This life, if anything. You get into the debate of, do you really need to adopt a certain religion to get out, or to get out properly, or to get to the right place, or to get to heaven? There's no question that we are not our body, our avatar. We're not just going to go into the dirt. The atheist argument at this point, based on just what you could observe out your window, how the reality works, the atheist argument is retarded. It's incredible some of the smartest people still think that way. How? They don't, whatever. I'm not going to go there. But the point is of this section, I'd rather be right where we are now, knowing so much about ourselves, knowing so much about how reality works, the true nature of ourselves. And then it seems to be, there's a scale. The more we find out about ourselves, the more the reality, maybe in a panic or in a desperation move, is going to throw these nightmares at us for whatever reason in response. Is what happening now in response to the truth community waking up to a large degree? That's pretty arrogant to say yes, but to a degree, yes, to a degree. The minions on behalf of the screen, the Not Milk reality, seems to respond to where we go. It just seems like a scale, doesn't it? In other words, I don't really know how to put this, but if we were completely blind and just gathered around the radio. And honey, do you think we could? My grandparents bought the big thing was they bought a Ford LTD, this big Ford. It was like a big purchase in the early 70s, a Ford LTD. I think it had the fake wood paneling. It was a big station wagon. That's the biggest thing in their lives. That's all they knew. Like, should we buy the Ford LTD? They didn't know what's the Statue of Liberty. What we talked about, they would have no clue. They have no clue about themselves other than whatever they learn through their religious pastor or their imam or rabbi or whatever religion they participate in. All they knew about their spiritual selves came from that person. Okay, they could read the Bible, but they weren't interpreting it properly. You have to go through a lot of the stuff we're going through. Like our friend Ben at the VAT City channel, VAT_City channel, has said, he's read the Bible many times, didn't get much out of it. It's first level, reading it literally, taking the words literally, then experienced many things in his lives, certain experiences on the eclipse, a potential near-death experience, things happened to him. He came back at one point in his life, read the Bible, saw the second and third level meanings, was interpreted completely differently, much more than just literally reading the words on the page. One of many examples, like David and Goliath. It's just a real story about David who bested the favored and much larger and bigger man, or, it's just a real account, or does it mean something else, and you're supposed to interpret it in another way? So the point is not to get specific about what exactly is literal in the Bible. I certainly shouldn't be talking about that. The point is, in general, to apply that. What is our knowledge base now to reality itself, where we can no longer or should no longer interpret things literally, because this place isn't very real. The biggest thing of all time that, quote, truthers need to be reminded of is to stop chasing and step back. Step back as far as you need to really observe what's going on. And you'll see, time and time again, it's not very real. A close analysis of exactly what happened here or there is pointless. I'll give you an example. Some shooting happened. I don't watch the news. Was it Wisconsin? I don't even know. I think it started with a K. I don't care. Please don't comment. This is my whole point. Some people sent me a few things, but let me just tell you, if I didn't communicate to the people that emailed me what my take is, it's very simple. I looked at these events closer than almost anybody, but RV, okay? Closer than almost anybody, but the original guy for the fake events, RV. And I came to the conclusion 2 years ago, I don't know, maybe a little longer, that I'm never going to look at them again, because if it's a major event that makes the front page of the New York Times or makes the first 5 minutes of the evening news, it's fake. Will there be a real event once in a while? Well, yeah. Well, so what? So I classify everything as fake. So what? I'm going to be right most of the time. But the point is, I'm not going to look anymore. We need to, okay, been there, done that, move on. Big bang event, I don't care. It's the reality presents that fake. Matt, look what Elon Musk did. I don't care. But then when you do this enough, everything the reality presents is pretty much fake, or it breaks down when you look at it closely. Everything? Yeah, everything. Every damn thing. So the point is, we all need to learn the lesson to stop looking at this stuff closely. And then you get into, well, what is with the reality itself that could possibly pull this off? No, nothing real could pull this shit off. That's why the reality gives us so many graduated animal farms, so many outlets, so many places to go, so many truth channels that just analyze the screen, exactly what the minions are doing, the tactics of the minions, not even the overall strategy of what they're trying to accomplish to degrade the human soul, the tactics, how'd they do this, what exactly hit the Pentagon, and then the more dumbed-down graduated animal farms like Glenn Beck and Rush Limbaugh gathering in their millions and millions of sheep, and then the reality will give away through their minions a ton of what we call truth, as long as people get stuck there. they'll give it all away up until the very last thing. But the very last thing, what they don't want you to do is ever find out what you came here to do for yourself. What if you spent your entire, think how ridiculous this sounds to most of us now, yet it was a very just pursuit in 2008, 2009. Somebody spending years trying to figure out exactly what happened to the side of the Pentagon. They're driving their car down there, trying to walk the grounds, getting thrown off by security. In 2008 or so, we would consider that's a just pursuit. This guy's a real truther. Well, hey, give him props, give him cred, but we've learned. We need to have learned our lesson. It doesn't matter what happened to the side of the Pentagon. When you study that, and then there's thousands of other rabbit holes and thousands of other things that present themselves, and then the eclipse happens. I was like, oh, look at that. Isn't that pretty? And you get all these things. You say, wait a second here. Let me back the heck up. This ain't real. All right? Go back to what the ancients say about waking from the dream and Maya. And that's where we need to be. And then you go around the corner. Guess what's going to be there? Another rabbit hole. Whether it be Tartaria, mud flood. You can study this if it fascinates you, but don't spend too much time or give it too much stock. We don't know this by now? Oh, like, okay, Matt, you're talking very definitively, like you have all the answers. Well, I'm not saying for you. I'm convinced myself. So if I talk definitively, I think this very clearly myself. You don't have to think it. We live in a reality generation machine. Is it ever going to occur where there's just no more conspiracy to chase? No. Every time we walk around the corner, there's going to be another rabbit hole. And if we're not interested in it, the rabbit will poke its head out. It'll try to get our attention. It'll try to go have us get our Elmer Fudd rifle and clean it out and come out and hunt him. If we just let it alone and just sat on the porch like the two guys, old guys in Secondhand Lions, the rabbit would come up to us. It would come up like a cat, start going in and out of our feet. If we just ignored it, it would come to us. Then if we want to chase it and hunt it, it'll run and hide. It's a reality generation machine is where we live. That, to me, yes, I'm talking like I'm definitive on it because I'm definitive in my own viewpoint. You don't have to adopt it. To me, this is clear and obvious at this point. There's always another conspiracy. I said, probably a little bit less than a year ago, right before, the Kobe, the basketball event went down, or maybe I think I said it right before that, but it might have been in response to that. Probably in response to that right after. I said, is there ever going to be a major event anywhere in the world, a major event that gets our attention, that gets the attention of the world, that's not going to be just riddled with conspiracy? And I alluded to that that's just not possible in this reality. Every major event that happens will, from this point forward, well, it's not from this point forward. It's kind of always been like that, going back through Kennedy and going back farther than that. But it's becoming accentuated on steroids now. So it became clear there will be every major event, what you call news event, will be riddled with all sorts of conspiracy. So we in this community can interpret it a certain way, and then usually in a way that makes us seem nuts to the people around us. Yet we're not misreading the facts. We're putting real connections together. It's just what the reality does. Nothing real could do that time after time. It's impossible. So you have to back up and say, well, what is it doing? The reality itself. What does it want from me? And what it wants is obvious. Now, before I get into that, let's just say, I keep saying the reality itself. Let me explain that to anybody that's struggling with that. And we all struggle with this. In terms of pointing at what we consider to be the bad guy, there's something here that obviously, for lack of better words, is evil. That's trying to bring a human being or a human being with a real soul or connection to spirit into a lower place, which I keep saying downward, down towards the zeros and ones. 3D is already low as it is, down towards a consciousness uploaded to a computer, cutting off connection to spirit. But there's nothing to point at here. Okay, it wants us running around trying to find out who done it. It wants us to play the game of Clue. It was Miss Scarlet in the library with the pipe wrench. That's what it wants. That's why it throws these rabbit holes. It wants us running around chasing that. There's nothing to point at here. There's nothing to point at. The police lineup. I'm not going to do it again, but it's my favorite thing of all time. You bring in all these different bad guys in the truth community, and all the different truth channels point at them. Oh, it's this group, it's that group. That's what the reality does. So I keep saying the reality. I don't know. That's why I called it Clinton backwards, not Milk. We don't have anything to point at. We're never going to have anything to point at other than the minions, and we'll talk about that in a second. We can only talk about it in general terms. And I just end up saying the reality itself, the screen. It presents itself and its strategies on how it wants to degrade a human being come through the minions. The minions, the Hillary Clintons, the George Soroses, the George Clooney's, the Bruce Springsteens, the Ellens, through the minion level that serve the reality. I can't talk about it in more specific terms, and it's a waste of time to ever try to get more specific. We understand the general strategy. We don't need to know the exact nature of it. Christians would call it Satan. Other people would call it something else. It doesn't matter. The role is similar. It's to put human beings into a low place or to cut off certain ties to what we call higher self or spiritual self. So in general, I'll talk about the reality. Are we ever going to find out exactly what Ellen is? Where she gets her marching orders? Is it just comes in as a download? She has no idea the role she's playing in the reality. She might not. We get a sense that people like Anderson Cooper have a absolute sense of what the role they're playing. But the more I look at this, very few are in on it to the 10 out of 10 degree. So Anderson, for example, he knows when he's talking about these bang events, he knows it didn't happen. But does he know more than that? Does he know the inner workings of how reality itself work? Does he know exactly how the screen operates or how the real mechanism works? No, in my opinion, no. It's very compartmentalized. The minions themselves, we give them too much credit that they know more than they do. They don't, in my opinion. I'm pretty well. I don't know. I haven't been in the back rooms, where the creepy crimpets are served by Jared Kushner. But what is Jared Kushner? Is he human the way you are? Probably not, but we'll never know exactly what these people are, who they ultimately finally report to. But we don't have to. That's the rabbit chase it wants. All right, so that's just in general when I talk about the reality wants this, the reality wants that. There's no other way to put it. You can't name it. Oh, Matt, don't you understand? It's the ancient families. It's Rothschilds or whatever. No, if you know the name and you know of them, they serve something much, much larger, more greater evil, something that can't be pointed to, something in the mist, something you can never potentially experience directly. The only thing we experience directly, and even then it's not even directly, is what the reality wants to accomplish through or to a human being presented by the asshole level, the minions. And I am aware that a few minutes ago I said what the reality wants is obvious, and I haven't even mentioned it yet. I definitely will get to it. And I know there's a segment here saying, Matt, you don't call it evil. I don't want to go too deep in the weeds. I want to keep this a little bit more upper level or lighter. Light, yeah, right, for a certain group here. But of course, if you back up far enough and you observe the minions like Hillary Clinton, there's many smart people, of course, that say they're playing a role actually for our spiritual development. You have to be in the middle of the shit sandwich, observe the assholes to actually better yourself. Where would we be without 9/11? Not that they deserve any sort of praise or anything, but there is merit to this. And I believe this to a degree, but I don't want to get into it here in this presentation. It's too much in the weeds. If you back up far enough, the whole minion level asshole serving the asshole reality, it's actually for those that can navigate the course properly. It actually aids your spiritual development. You can spin it and better yourself because of the actions of the slave master. So what are you saying? It's better you actually can benefit by being a slave? Yes, and you can if you do the right things for yourself. But I don't want to get into the weeds here. Just in general, it's probably not accurate or even fair to just say Hillary Clinton and all these types are just pure evil. No, you probably agreed to come here. If you came here and it was nothing but sunshine being blown up your ass all day, you'd learn nothing. These minions are playing a role that in a way actually benefits you. But that's the end of that. We'll talk about that some other time. So in analyzing what does the reality want, I was thinking of it recently in terms of the old line. What is it about the greatest trick that Satan ever played was getting people to believe he didn't exist. Something along those lines. You may have heard that one before. Greatest trick he ever played was getting people to believe he doesn't exist. Well, everything here is inverted. Everything here can be spun. What happens when you look at that as a truth drop, but then you kind of spin it? He wants or gets people fooled into thinking he doesn't exist. Then he works in the shadows. Well, the reality works the opposite way. What happens when you spin that? The greatest trick this reality plays is getting you to believe it does exist. It's just the opposite. The truth of it is just the opposite. Whatever we call this reality, would you say, let's start with the absolute basics. Would you say it wants to be taken seriously? Or it just wants you to live your life like it's just some sort of dream and a mist and something you'll wake up from and a Maya? It wants to be taken so seriously, the reality itself. Look at what's going on now. Oh, everything's a crisis. Every news event going back our entire lives is always a crisis. It's always 10 out of 10. The entire reality works so hard to be taken seriously. And then it wants those types of emotions that come from a real human being that take the reality too seriously. Oh, I'm worried about this, or I have anxiety over this, or I'm not going to get this job promotion, or my kid might not get in over here. Oh, this bill was late. Worry, worry, worry. Stress, stress, stress. Anxiety, anxiety, anxiety. Feed on that energy. And it wants you, it can't get the right energies out of you if you don't believe it's real. So it's the opposite of the Satan parable. The reality doesn't work hard to make people think it's not real and they'll screw you on the side. In order to screw you, it has to make you believe everything about your life and reality is 100% real. So, have we learned anything? What do you think we do? I don't know. It's so friggin' easy. It's embarrassingly easy. You don't give it any credence, stock. You don't harden its cement. You don't look upon it or act as if it's real. Okay, gets back to TJ's philosophy of, he said, forget F free will. If free will, if I have a choice to go left or right, they're both choices inside the reality itself. It's not, forget free will. His philosophy is free won't. Adopt free won't. Free won't is to, will you choose? And here, come on down. You're the next contestant coming down to hell. And the price is right. What do you want? Door number 1 or door number 2? Oh, can I make a phone call to my wife at home and she can help me decide? It's like a blend of like 14,000 video games. Game shows. But you get the point. And free won't says, I'm not choosing either door. I'm not choosing either door. Whenever I can sense the reality, we start by it wants to be taken seriously, I won't. And that's not a choice of door number 1 or door number 2. It's just completely withdrawing it as much as you can. And it's just another way of putting into words, not free will, free won't, something we've talked about for a long time about withdrawing your energy, withdrawing your participation, giving it no stock, giving it no credibility or credence, not worrying about it, because that's obviously what it wants. And we don't need to do this, but it's such a fun exercise. We'll do it for a few minutes. Does it work hard to be taken seriously, the reality? Does it work hard? Oh, yeah. I mean, look at what did we do a few months back? All the things that are going to kill humanity since the 70s. the killer bees or Africanized bees are coming up from Mexico. That's the cover of Time magazine, the cover of Newsweek. The acid rain, the ozone hole, everything's going, oh my gosh, there's a crisis. And then 7 or 8 years ago, then they have to start with the bang events and gun legislation and all this stuff. And now we have what's going on out our window. Everything is pushed in terms of how it wants you to take it seriously. Everything is pushed to a 10 out of 10. Now, okay, we understand this. Let's back up. Apply the 3 steps or something similar to the 3 steps. What would be the true nature of a reality that works its ass off through this minion layer of endless assholes to constantly be taken seriously? What is that all about? Well, there's only a few possibilities. Well, when it wants to be taken seriously and creates endless crisis, negative news headlines, things that make you worry, things that put you in fear. 50 years of Cold War, and here comes the fat man Kim Jong-un, and he's got his hand on the button, and he's got another hand mailing a private postcard to Dennis Rodman. We just worry. Well, you would think there's no reason for that, because let me just back up a second. The people down your cul-de-sac believe it's all real. Anybody here sees this as all orchestrated. It's all crafted. It's all fake. It's all planned in advance. So we can come to these conclusions where the guy down the cul-de-sac has no clue. He just thinks it's real. But what type of reality needs to do this? Well, one that obviously feeds off the energy of real people. There's no other explanation for how it operates. But something we don't talk about much is it may need either that energy, or it needs your attention, or at least it needs most people to believe it's real for it actually to exist, for it to be real, for it to hold itself together. You know, the force, this mystical thing that binds us. And these assholes, whether it be the minion level, which is the outward representation of the reality itself, the not nilk, Christians would call it Satan, anything that stands behind the curtain that wants to degrade a human being, if we don't take it seriously, it may not be able to exist. It probably gets back to, Santos's all is atum. We know now that these scientists, from Contact, these scientists here want you to believe that something just blowed up and then just at random protein mated on the back of an amino acid. And that scene from Star Trek, the last episode's real, where the Q showed Picard how we came together in a pond of goo, and we just evolved from that, evolving from a pond of goo through a mouse, through a lemur, through something that got stepped on by a dinosaur, through monkeys, to Neanderthal man, through Lucy, to Homo erectus, to Homo sapien, is an absolute joke. Nobody here listening to this believes in that. It is absolutely ridiculous. So what is the opposite? Well, the opposite is likely true. The complete opposite of that is there is nothing physical. There wasn't anything that blowed up in this grand universe that you can get in your Elon Musk spaceship and go out to. It's all stems from consciousness. Consciousness came first. The spark of intelligence or consciousness or spiritual beings projecting consciousness into this reality. This came first. And how does the minions in the reality operate? It operates like it needs your participation, it needs your worry, it needs your anxiety to exist. Just proves, more that there's the Big Bang and all this is a joke. Any theory that ultimately goes back to the physical, explaining how rocks really moved, is a joke. I don't know what Santos means. I've said this so many times, but all is atum. I wish these people would be less cryptic. People like this channel, I don't have all the answers, but I can explain things in a way people can understand. These channels like Chiron's Last, stop being cryptic. We're kind of out of time. Give us the information we need in a way we can understand it. And I am one of the only channels that will follow through with all 3 steps and remind us all of the only thing that's important. The only thing. It doesn't matter. You want to research... what is that ridiculous thing? The Lockheed Martin Space Net or Space Fence or the Sun Simulator, or who gives a flying F? That's all step 1 stuff. The reality loves when you waste your time circle jerking at step 1. Step 2 was basically what we just did. What type of a reality would act in such a way, would do all this to get your buy-in and belief in it and your anxiety and your worry? What type of reality? Well, it tells you a lot about it. It's not as real as we think. There's some dark forces at work, but forget that step's bullcrap too. The last step, does anybody not know where we're going now? What does that tell me about myself? Is anybody struggling with that? It's so simple. A reality that constantly manipulates, lies, gets me to think this when I shouldn't, gets me to act in a certain way, tries to harvest energy out of me in a certain way, gets me worrying about certain things, wants me constantly fooled in the dark. It's constantly getting in my business in everything. Ooh, what does that tell me about me? I know. It tells me that I'm exactly what the atheist describes. I'm just a rotting carbon carcass that will go into the dirt shortly and never exist again. That's exactly right. Because if you were that, of course the reality would work so hard and try to get energies out of it. Do I have to say it? What does it tell you about yourself? That this is just some bullshit Amtrak train stop between DC and Richmond. It's just, experience what you can. We did a lot more before this. We'll do a lot more after death. There's no reason whatsoever to fear death. I don't personally believe I have to just beg a God to get to a certain place. I don't believe that. The teachings of Jesus Christ may be a way out for many. I think there are several ways out. But I don't believe there will be some sort of judgment where all-powerful God crosses his arms and says, this individual coming before me helped every old lady across the street, never did anything bad or was once bad, but completely transformed their lives, started to protect animals, protect human rights, but this person over here did not throw himself before me. So, that's screwed. You're screwed. Off to hell with you. I don't buy it. I believe more along the lines of what my friend Tony talks about with me. Things like we agreed to this incarnation. There's a reason we are Tommy, the deaf, dumb, and blind kid. We don't know anything. This is necessary to come in blind, or we are an aspect of something else, a higher self, for example. He would describe it as you are, say, the pinky. You're simply a little pinky being dipped into the water, basically serving an aspect which you could consider to be yourself, serving higher self, but you are one of many fingers, potentially hundreds, all experiencing different things at the same time, in some way being used by higher self, being used by an aspect of yourself. Look deep within yourself, Clarice. What Miggs did was irreprehensible. Look deep within yourself, Clarice. Then they dumb it down by making it a storage facility. It's potentially it's a massive fractal. You experience a dream. The dream in some way serves you. You get experiences from the dream, correct? I once fell out of the space shuttle, went all the way down, landed in a parking lot, got up, nothing happened. Just wasn't even hurt. And went into like a 7-Eleven, bought some hot dog rolling around on the rollers for 20 hours with the chili meat that's in the silver tin for 4 days. It's all these bizarre experiences. We get experiences from dreams. It could be this massive fractal going on where you get experiences from dreams. Well, you are potentially a dream now to another aspect of your greater consciousness or higher self. Just because it seems real and lucid is a joke. Just because you can, punch your fist through a wall and break your metatarsals, or is that maybe that's in the foot, but whatever, break your hand punching through a wall, it doesn't mean it's real. Well, Matt, you fell out of the space shuttle, nothing happened, there was no physical pain. It was just a different level of being lucid or a different experience. That doesn't mean that your experiences here aren't serving a greater aspect of consciousness. Why wouldn't it be the same way? It's just like when you wake up in the morning from a dream, it all made sense. You'll die in this reality. It'll just make sense to an aspect of yourself that's greater. Is it you in the dream? Well, not really, but it kind of is. Is it you here right now? Well, probably not really, but it kind of is. That shouldn't worry you. The reality wants you to, this is all there is. This is all there is to me. It's probably some sort of a gigantic fractal. You know, to some degree, the minions and the assholes have a lot of it figured out. They carry through the ancient knowledge. Many of them likely have knowledge of past experiences. Many are pretty much, confined or doomed to this place. They don't have the same spiritual connection, put it that way. They're more like they're Horcruxed here. So we come into this reality, Tommy, the Who, Tommy, the deaf, dumb, and blind kid. I would think we come in, the deaf, dumb, and blind kid, but he sure can play some mean pinball, because to have the experience or whatever this reality is supposed to do for us, you have to come in, Tommy. How does that work? We don't know. We're never going to know, but that's probably how it works. Well, if you knew this or that, it wouldn't work out for you, son. Now sit down and shut up. Just live your life. But the minions, according to, I got a sense of this a long time ago, but confirmed by smart people like Tony and some other people I interact with, they have a different type of incarnation. They potentially do remember past lives or how they screwed people in other incarnations. And there's at least an aspect of them, they know much more that how things work here. They're not Tommy. We are Tommy. So that's why they put all this truth in movies. I mean, where does all that come from? Does some of it flow through the directors? And but we don't know exactly. But I do believe, and it, ultimately, remember the 3 steps for what we need to know about ourselves. All of this pondering doesn't matter. It's just for fun. But there's probably an aspect of the minions that know a whole lot. That's how a lot of this stuff gets into movies. The truth has to be put there. It's part of the role that the minions serve. Even Animal House. It's true that Animal House, the fractal nature of reality or of consciousness. Donald Sutherland smoking pot with, what's his name, Pinto. Why Pinto? Why not? Your new Delta Tau Chi name is Flounder. He's like, smoking pot. He says, well, so this entire solar system could be like one tiny atom or cell in the hand of a giant being? Yeah. And he gets another, hit, I guess, and says, that means one tiny cell or atom in my finger may be a whole separate solar system or universe. Oh my God! Just he finally caught the potential fractal nature of how reality works. There's a truth drop in Animal House. Blutarsky becoming senator, that's not a truth drop. But that fractal nature of reality may be. That's the way this shit works. It's not just movies. It's all over music, Stairway. You think Plan and Page, okay, I'll take that back. You think they wrote Stairway to Heaven? Page has a creepy background. Some people do come from certain families. But in general, like Peter Townsend, who are you? Who? They didn't just decide to write that as people in their 20s. It's all managed by the minions. Who are you? People, where the shit comes from. It almost seems like contractually they have to lay that truth down in all forms of art and media. How it comes about or why they have to do it, or it doesn't matter. They have to do it to combat their karma shit sandwich. Who knows? Who cares? Step 3 is all that matters. It's a truth drop. And what kind of reality puts the truth of reality in all forms of art and media? At what type of reality could manage all of that, could pull all of that off? Maybe Page is one of the few that could write this, occult and esoteric stuff. But they're just puppets and pawns. Sarah McLachlan, this is my favorite example. Is it Surfacing? Is that the album? One of her first big ones with ADI, I do believe you smell bad. The shit like that. It's just riddled with esoteric, occult, as above, so below. Little Canadian Sarah McLachlan, 29 years old. She didn't write that shit. She probably could just figure out how to tie her shoes and tune a guitar. She wasn't initiated into, the frat behind Delta Tau Chi and the Skull and Bones. She just a front person to carry forth the message that for some reason these minions have to implant in everything. Maybe the first song on that Sarah McLachlan album that has Adia, Building a Mystery. Building a Mystery. Oh, come on. Yeah, a little 20-year-old just wrote that shit. Come on, man. It's everywhere. It is absolutely everywhere. Building a mystery. Give me a break. What kind of reality could pull that shit off time after time? What's going on now? An impossible level of precise coordination with everybody in on it without knowing they're in on it. What's happening now makes like 9/11 look like dropping a pack of Tic Tacs. Everybody marching to the same tune, kicking up their heels in the same way. No dissent, no pushback. The news managing it like 100 monkeys on steroids times a billion, where this news program starts showing every news reporter in a mask. Now, then all of them nationally even are reporting from masks. Everybody goes into the mask. No normal reality or anything could pull this shit off. So what's the conclusion then? What Gus is saying then is it ain't real. It ain't real. And keep coming back to step 3. Well, what does that mean for myself? A whole lot. And it ain't that hard to understand, but everybody around us thinks we're just a bunch of jerks, conspiracy theorists. I mean, give me a break. See, I'm always trying in this way to build a case for most people listening that this place, I always say, ain't very real, but it is not real at all, in my opinion. And I use it saying, well, what type of reality that's real could pull off the sea event that's going on now with every country doing the same thing, every governor basically the same thing, no dissent. I mean, and then people still try to explain it away. Well, Matt, don't you understand the one world system and the council of whatever, they have everybody under on a tight leash and come on. But we could do this over and over and over again. Reality breakdowns at every turn, the missing videos related to the South Tower. And again, you don't need all this roundabout convincing if you're Mandela affected. And there's like 50 people going, crossing their arms. Oh boy, here he goes. If you're Mandela affected, the reality itself just changes before your eyes. Greg and I got one yesterday. I don't talk Mandela effect on this channel, but just think, you ever see Inglourious Bastards? Whatever, Brad Pitt, the guy's called the Bear Jew or whatever, Inglourious Bastards? Spell it right now, quickly. The movie. INGLORIOUSBASTARDS, Bastards. Well, look, Greg and I looked at it, and Greg's like, what is it, horse shit? Bastards, BASTERDS. Inglorious, INGLOURIOU, an extra U, and then bastards. Like, what the F is this? Greg's like, that's horse shit. That's a Mandela effect. Probably, yeah, we don't even talk about him anymore. And do I know for sure about that one? Am I a big Brad Pitt fan? No, but we did all the same thing. We went to Etsy. We did all the people that did the poster art, and they all got the name of the movie wrong. We did all the research. Greg and I get on the phone. We go to Etsy and they do the art and all this, over time, this starts of residuals start to disappear. eBay, everybody selling a movie poster just doesn't know the name of the movie. They spell it wrong. Inglorious, they spell wrong. And Bastards, they spell wrong. Everybody selling a movie poster didn't know how to spell the name of the movie. Isn't that incredible? But to people that reject the Mandela effect, that don't mean shit. Whatever. I'll end this because it triggers people. But to me, we're in a gigantic, the entire reality itself is a gigantic Mandela effect. Reality is being reset or put into a certain place where masks seem normal. The constant lingering threat of a pathogen is just the way we will live, and reality is going into this weird place. And it's not as simple to say that everybody's just going along with it because they're just sheep. They're basically being minimal level downloaded into accepting, but it could be a giant Mandela effect. They're going along, the people around us are going along with wherever the reality is going. We're the ones rooted to another place. So if you see, it's just absolutely bizarre the way the world is behaving, and you don't understand why all your family and friends and everybody's just going along with this. And what happened to all the stuff we grew up with? We talked about Americans have freedom, at least a freedom to choose their own, medical choices, whether to wear a mask or not. Everybody's just going along with it like zombies. The reality's changing. The people are changing right with the reality. To me, it could be a gigantic Mandela effect. No different than when I say to my buddy, if you build it, he will come, which is ridiculous to me. I know what it was. There's no proof of what I'm saying. I understand that. I don't care if I have an old VCR tape and I popped it in and it said, if you build it, he will come. So I know it's always been that way. That's the way that Mandela effect works. Reality changes and it reflects back like a retrocausality, back through time. So my buddy says, just without even hesitating, of course, it's always been, if you build it, he will come. Of course, this is how a society reacts to a major germ or pathogen, no matter what part of it's faked or what part of it's real. They're going along with it like a giant Mandela effect. So if you see it all as strange, how people are acting, people are behaving in the grocery store, nobody pushing back, every news report saying the exact same. If you see this as strange, you're coming from another place. Then you are basically Mandela affected. There's not that much difference, in my opinion, with what's going on now and a friggin' Kit Kat dash change. But just take a pause and getting back to what I was saying about some of the theories about you're just a little pinky, aspect of something greater, fractal nature, aspect of higher self, the greater body, for lack of any way to really understand it. It says, I want to experience that cold stream coming out of that glacier, but I don't want to jump in it. So just dip the little pinky in. Check it out. Little pinky's you being used by higher self to check out, it's cold. And we're getting screwed over by Hillary Clinton down here in this glacier river. And that you're being used, a lot of smart people say, by higher self, fractal nature, an aspect of something larger. Again, these concepts are repeated in movies and TV shows, and the best one I can think of right now is, and I guarantee there's several videos on YouTube, just this small speech. If you watch, it's pretty interesting to go through the Black Mirror Netflix series, Black Mirror, the episode. It's like Twilight Zone, for anybody that doesn't know. Every episode's different. Black Mirror Bandersnatch, Bander, like snatch, Bandersnatch. And if you don't want to see it or you don't have Netflix, it's pretty stupid because you have to choose what your character does. That you actually use your remote. Should he go through the door? And you kind of all end up in the same place, and it didn't work too well. But if you want to avoid all that, just YouTube Colin's speech, COLIN''S, Colin's speech, Black Mirror Bandersnatch, and a bunch of videos will come up, maybe 4 or 5 minutes long, set to the music from the Risky Business music, and it's similar to the concepts or the concept I just presented. And Colin in Bandersnatch is that annoying actor, the guy you don't like from The Maze Runner. That's another truth drop. Talk about that one. Colin says to the star of Bandersnatch, he says, reality is like, I says, it almost seems like 1 in thousands. They're all going on simultaneously. It doesn't matter at all if one of us just jumps over the side of the balcony here to our death. And I guess they're on some sort of ayahuasca or DMT or some sort of drug. And but he says, one of us is jumping right now. And it just will, just affecting a river in a tiny way, just putting a little bit of a rock into the side of a river. The stream will move ever so slightly. So you just jump off this balcony and die. But it doesn't really matter to the whole. There's thousands of you experiencing things like this at the same time. It doesn't matter. One of us jumps off. My wife here will grieve, but this is just one tiny little sliver of all these simultaneous realities. So there's absolutely merit to a degree in Colin's speech if you want to check that out. The Maze Runner. What happens in The Maze Runner? 1 is very, very good. Well, then it's not very, very good, but it's not a bad movie if you're not annoyed by the kid, the lead actor. And 2 is, the other ones get pretty bad, but they're not, considering how bad movies are today, it's watchable. Maze Runner, kid comes up into this environment, it's controlled, there's walls on all sides, has no memory of I think he ends up remembering his name, but he has no idea how he got there. No, it's a absolute. It's the maze runner. Then they eventually try to get out into the maze, leave the environment they're in. Of course, in some way, it's an analogy to life itself. But what kind of reality can present these types of hints and clues, impossible coordination, pulling it off time after time? Come on, man, this shit ain't real. And this woman who's emailed me before, she seemed very nice and friendly. Out of the blue, maybe she had a bad day or something. She was reaming me out like a week or so ago. Won't mention any names. Not, no curses or anything, but just like, you never present any solutions. This and that, you never present any solutions. I'm the only one that presents solutions. It's just probably the solution you don't want to hear. What solution? How we're going to organize our pickup truck army and go get the people in D.C., go get Hillary Clinton and bring justice, and that's exactly what the reality wants. It's not a winning. We know 100% you can't win going to fight it. What do you want to use? Its systems, its prisons, its courts to go fight it, to give it the exact energy it wants? Of course that's what it wants. The only way to win is to come to you come to a certain place and then forget free will, free won't. You just do something completely different. You can't go fight it, even if it's not what it wanted, what it wants. What did I just say? What did he say? It don't matter. It's what it wants. So you never present any solutions. Well, maybe it's probably not what you want to hear. Here's the solution. The meaning of life is just to simply come to the conclusion that life has meaning. Well, what does that mean? The meaning of life is simply to come to the conclusion that life has meaning. Then you do the 3 steps. Reality plays a trick. Once you see it, then you see it. You don't have to participate in it any longer. So the person that bitched me out, here's the solution. This is the only solution. Unless I'm not a religious sense or Jesus or I'm not going there. I don't go there. There are other solutions people will take for themselves. This is, to me, my solution. We come in, Tommy, the deaf, dumb, and blind kid. Then you study it and you wise up to a degree and say, this whole reality is just playing a trick. In what area? In every area. It's all bullcrap. Everything we look at, it's all a trick. It's all a manipulation. You think for years and years that the magician, the guy, the magic show at the kids' parties, pulling out rabbits and making coins appear behind people's ears. You think it's all real for decades, and then this ain't real. This is a magician. It's a fucking magician. So okay, well, then what most of the truth it realizes, the reality realizes that millions of truthers are gonna finally realize it's a magician at a kid's party. What do we do to the people that start to notice it's a magician, just a cheap magician? You've got Rodney Dangerfield there from Easy Money taking pictures, kids' pictures. Well, we make sure they spend their entire lifetimes trying to figure out how the 2-bit magician pulled the coin out from behind the kid's ear. Just get them to study it, rabbit hole after rabbit hole. And then when they get bored, we'll have the magician throw a new trick. So then they'll have to study that. But the real smart people say, well, wait a second. What kind of reality can be a magician time after time, week after week, news story after news story? But once we determine how that works, or more appropriately doesn't work, because you get to the point where you go, well, I'll never figure out how they're pulling all this off, but it doesn't matter. What does that mean for myself? Oh, that's the solution. Well, I came here blind. I'm most likely signed up to be here. For what? The solution is everybody probably has an individual take on this. What can I do with this life and the tools it gives me or affords me to actually improve myself, to use the reality for what it's here for, to do for us? It's mostly and primarily here to do for us if we use it for ourselves the right way. And secondarily, it's here to screw us. And probably as a reward for these bastards and these inglorious bastard minion assholes, if people aren't smart enough to wake up to it and use it for what they should be using it for, then it probably gives the minions permission to screw them. Right in, I've watched another great episode, Black Mirror, incredible episode, Black Mirror from Netflix. It's called Black Museum. black museum. And this black girl pulls up in a car. She's the only one that's going to go in the museum. You think it is about race, but it's about like this dark, stuff where people were tortured and just all this weird stuff is going on in the museum. And it is incredible truth drops about what we've talked about in the past about Horcrux. That Harry Potter concept of Horcrux. This is hard to describe for those who haven't seen it, so I'll just spend less than a minute, then I'll go on to the truth drops as soon as I can. But inside this museum, the main attraction, the sick proprietor of all these dark things, it looks like a hologram of a black guy sitting in an electric chair, and people come and they pull the lever on the electric, and the guy suffers. But it's not, you find out it's not a hologram. It's actually an aspect of the real person's consciousness, or basically, most people that aren't into the things that we think about and study, they would just see it as him. Somehow it's a projection of him, but really him, and he's just tortured over and over and over. People come by thinking they're just, there's just this exhibit, and it's like an aspect of his real consciousness, or it's just a truth drop. I'm not explaining it well. And it's so dark, it's so disturbing. After you pull the lever and watch this hologram of this guy get electrocuted, which in a way, an aspect of his real self is really experiencing time after time. It's just a horrible infinity loop of torture. You can push and get a trinket. The trinket is a picture of the guy's face screaming as he's being electrocuted, but then the proprietor, the really sick individual, the proprietor of the Black Museum, says, "No, that's another aspect of his real self. In that trinket, him screaming over and over is another aspect of his real consciousness trapped inside the little keychain trinket, and you'll see him screaming. It's a real part of him screaming for eternity in the trinket. It's very disturbing, but really worth watching. So it gets into the Harry Potter concept of Horcrux, which is, in a way, that's what this place wants to do to people, or how it operates. And from the Harry Potter perspective, the last 3 Harry Potters, the main theme is about Dumbledore and Harry going out to find these objects. The evil wizard, for those who haven't seen it, Voldemort, has put his soul in, I don't know if it's 6 different objects or 7 different objects. He spread his soul out and implanted his soul in these different objects to protect himself. So if he dies, then there's other aspects of his soul. One is in a gem, one is in a book. Well, he put another aspect of his soul in a snake. So he's fragmented his soul. And Harry Potter presents it as, the movies presented, the darkest thing that can be done. Now, what have we heard in our truth pursuits over and over again? Well, not over and over. It's not that common of a theme, but we've heard this. If you've been around these parts of the neighborhood long enough, we've heard that one of the main things we need to do here is put ourselves back together. Remember, our aspects of ourselves fraction off here. Is that one of the main parts of life, is to find certain aspects of ourselves that have been lost. So this whole idea of Horcrux applies in to potentially our predicament here in a lot of different ways, and also in a way that this is what the reality kind of wants to do to us. It wants us to freely choose to put an aspect of ourselves here. This is when we talk about how the reality wants us to root to it, or associate ourselves, our only merit and our only standing, and all that we think of ourselves is only associated with the reality. It's, I won a Nobel Prize. And we've talked about in the past, that might be a way of making a Jacob Marley chain and tying yourself to this reality. One of the main things the reality does is it wants you to root to it. Every time you give it stock or credibility, or take pride in its awards or medals or anything it pins on your chest like a Nobel Prize, that potentially you root to it. Potentially you just tie another rope, or an invisible Jacob Marley chain or rope around your waist. So at death, it has a greater chance to pull you right back. Maybe, potentially. But it's also the concept of Horcrux. Are people living their lives in such a way that they're actually leaving, maybe not from Harry Potter, a bit of their soul, but are they leaving a real bit of themselves, or maybe their soul? That's the spiritual supposedly is higher, and then the soul is what animates potentially us or other things in this 3D place, like birds and animals. The people that describe it as the soul is lower, is lesser than the spiritual connection back to your higher self, or something that always has been or always will be. So maybe it is trapping or leaving pieces of the soul here. And, the Harry Potter truth trap, we have to metaphorically, not really, but run around here and find, we've Horcruxed ourselves here potentially. And how do we, find and put those pieces back together? Remember, Harry Potter has the sword of Gryffindor, and, if he finds the gem with the soul of Voldemort in it, he wants to destroy it. If he destroys all of them, then Voldemort dies, but he can't break it open unless he has a special tool. I don't know. Again, we can interpret the potential truth drops in Harry Potter, which are there, of course. But back to Black Mirror, even when the prisoner, who I guess they gave him some BS and said he could avoid death row if he agrees to do this. No, I think what it turns out is the company says if we can download your consciousness at the time of the execution, they put a little device into his brain or on the side of his temple, the two temples. There's a reason for that, of course. Then they get his consciousness during the time of his execution, and he agrees to it because his family will be financially taken care of, or so they promise. So he's doing it for his wife and his kid. But she says this out of the blue, another truth drop. She says that puts before we even know what's going to happen to him, before we even get a sense that they haven't just taken his consciousness, they've taken an aspect of his soul or his being. She says that could affect your very soul. And people, we immediately would say, wow, listen to what she's saying. People watching it, popcorn crunchers, wouldn't have a clue. And she says, well, that could affect your very soul. And he's like, how? He goes, because you're agreeing to it. She just a truth drop right out there. Because you're agreeing to this procedure, and if it affects your very soul, you're kind of dooming your very soul. And that's exactly what happens. But before we even know what's going to happen, she says, relates to making the agreement and doing it to yourself to a consequence on your very soul. And come on, we know that. This place can't just come here, throw you behind the back of the woodshed and go to work on you. It has to use its minions, and it's, you're getting very sleepy devices and whatever things it hangs on the end of its chain to the Pied Piper lead you off, and it has to use its minions to get you to screw yourself. So Black Mirror, Black Museum there are many good Black Mirrors, and that's probably my favorite. And back to that person. You don't provide any solutions. Okay, let's meet at Valley Forge Park today, and we'll get a pickup truck army to roll down I-95 towards. What do you want me to tell you? What more? This is it, guys. This is basically it. It ultimately comes down to doing for yourself, just incorporating these general principles and practices, seeing it's all a drunken magician. There's a 2-bit reality that plays the same games and have people run the same scripts. And it doesn't take, what's his name? Badger. This is Badger from Oceans 11 and 12. He's like, my favorite thing in the world to do is like, you don't do the old gig again. You don't do the old gig. I know it's terrible, but you do the new gig. This reality is so pathetic. It runs the old gig over and over again. It just recycles time. The Ouroboros, it just recycles it over and over again. Like our friend Ben from Vat City. The reality waves are, we need to get on different reality, not escalators. Escalators? Yeah, like moving sidewalks. We need to jump on and keep moving towards the spiritual, towards the upper parts of how the chakras are represented in the outline of the body. You need to keep moving the best you can up, and you do that by doing certain things for yourself, but also cutting ties, cutting chains, removing invisible Jacob Marley chains by action, by intention, by saying anything I've ever done to root to this place is null and void. I am not my straw man of first name Cap, last name Cap. I need to operate in it to buy food, but it is not me. Constant intention, constant, this is how it works. If you weren't a powerful being, it wouldn't be Pied Pipering you to screw yourself. So am I going to get another? What solution do you want from me, lady? So you know what I think about sometimes in a presentation like this? What would a regular person on the street do if you gave this MP3 file and say, hey, listen to this while you're on the bus for 2 hours between Buffalo and Syracuse or Rochester? They're probably like 5 miles apart, but whatever. What would they think? Would there be certain things that resonate and like, well, that's interesting, or I should maybe pursue that? Or would it be like, what is this? Greg would like, what is this horse shit that you gave me to listen to on the bus between Syracuse and Binghamton? This guy's out of his freaking mind. Well, when's this bus arrive? I need to get in front of CNN and find out what's going on in the world. You got to be informed, boy. You got to watch the news, be informed. Mine is a terrible thing to waste. Thanks for listening.